Hello everybody and welcome back to English for Writing Business Emails. I'm Brian Stewart, and in this video lesson we're talking about Unit 2, Common Mistakes. Now what do I mean by common mistakes? Well, I've been doing workshops for several years teaching Korean business professionals to help them improve their English skill at writing emails. And over the years we notice that students will make the same mistakes again and again. In fact, what I usually say at the beginning of a workshop is, I've never met you before, but I already know what mistakes you're going to be making when we write emails in our practice sessions. And of course, this is a feature of learning a new language. Whatever language background you have, when you're thinking, of course you're thinking according to your native language grammatical rules and vocabulary. When we try to translate these ideas and these thoughts into a new language, of course we tend to make the same mistakes that other people from our same linguistic background are making. And you'll notice that, of course, if a group of Americans are studying Korean, the Korean teacher will notice, oh, these Americans are making the same mistake. Even, if she or he has another class come in, those students, the new students, will make the same mistakes as the old students. And that's just a feature of learning a new language. And it doesn't matter. It could be a group of Italians studying Chinese or a group of Chinese studying Scandinavian languages. And actually, that's a good point. If you are from a different country, most of the material in this unit is targeted for Korean business professionals, especially when they're writing business emails. But if you're from another country, you're not from Korea, and you're not from an English-speaking country, maybe there are some interesting or idiosyncratic uses of English in your country that are not commonly accepted in native English-speaking countries. And I'd be very interested to hear about those. Please leave a comment in the comment sections below if you have questions about them, or if you came across any of these in your experience. Maybe we can use this video and this video lecture series as kind of a forum for everybody to contribute and ask questions, and of course to learn about how to use English in a global setting. And that is kind of an interesting feature about English that is used all over the world. It's kind of a global business language nowadays. Of course, when we do that, when we use English to conduct business, we want to make sure that we eliminate any confusion or try to eliminate as many mistakes as possible. And that's part of the reason why this unit actually is one of the most popular units in my workshop. We're going through it, and I notice some participants will say, oh, I didn't know this was a mistake. This is incorrect? I say, yes, I know, and I realize that, but my intention is to, first of all, help students become aware that this is a mistake, show you how to correct it, and then we can practice correcting them so that they are correct in English. So that is my intention for this unit. Now, there's a lot of material to cover in Unit 2, so I've split up Unit 2 into 4 video lessons. We're going to do Part 1 today. Then Part 2 is also talking about common mistakes. Part 3 is talking about things that aren't exactly incorrect, they just sound awkward. And number 4 is a proofreading of an email to practice what we have learned in this unit. So let's begin. It's kind of a long-winded introduction, sorry about that, but let's begin with Part 1. Now, at the beginning of Unit 2 in the book, English for Writing Business Emails, and again, if you don't have the book and you would like to order the book, please find the information for ordering the book in the video description below this video. Okay, so with that out of the way, on page 12, there is a quiz for you to take, and there are 22 sentences, and in each sentence, there is 2 or 3 parts of the sentence in bold type. Those are your choices. Which choice is the correct choice to make in this sentence? And we can see number 1 at the bottom of the slide here. It says, number 1, Mr. Johnson will visit in, or visit to Thailand next month. So which one is correct? Now you may know that it should be visit. We don't use a preposition after visit. So it should be Mr. Johnson will visit Thailand next month. So when you hear the music, go ahead and stop the video, take the quiz on page 12, and then we'll go over it, see how many you can get right. If you don't know the answer, leave it blank. Don't worry about it. Of course, I'll give you the answers right after this. And then after that, we'll start with the explanations of why things are incorrect. Okay, so go ahead and take the test. Okay, welcome back. We've already done number 1, so the answer is already marked. Mr. Johnson will visit Thailand next month. Number 2, after reviewing the file, please send us your feedbacks, or please send us your feedback, which is correct. Perhaps you chose feedback, which would be correct. If you chose feedbacks, no worries. As I said before, I will explain the reasons why after this section. So, yeah, let's just go over the answers in this part right now. So, number 2 should be, after reviewing the file, please send us your feedback. Number 3, the team leader did not explain about or explain the results of the survey. Which one is correct? Explain about or just explain? I hope you chose explain. That is the correct answer. Number 4, I am planning or I have a plan to call Mr. Jones tomorrow. Now actually, both are okay grammatically. There's no problem with saying either one, but one sounds much more natural than the other one. Which one sounds more natural? I am planning to call Mr. Jones, or I have a plan to call Mr. Jones? Well, I am planning to call Mr. Jones tomorrow sounds more natural. Number 5, I have a lot of work, or I have many works to do today. Which one is correct? Of course, you probably chose, I have a lot of work to do today. Number 6, Mr. Smith would like to discuss or discuss about the new contract. Which is correct? This is similar to question number 3, right? When we said explain about. There's no reason to use about after explain or discuss, so discuss is the correct choice. Mr. Smith would like to discuss the new contract. Number 7, I am writing to inform you that the report will be completed until Friday or by Friday. Which one is correct? Perhaps you chose by Friday. Now actually, I don't explain this. That's not in the book. I didn't have a section in the book for until and by, but sometimes students do ask me about this. So let me just do number 7. I'll explain number 7 right now. Sometimes students will ask, well, when should I use until or when should I use by? It depends on the verb in the sentence. How long does that action take? If the action takes like a second, it's done very quickly, we use by. But if the action takes a long time, several minutes or several hours, then, or several days or even several years, you would use until. The best example of this in a workshop that I use is I'll ask a participant, excuse me, can I borrow manwon? Manwon is about $10. Manwon is Korean currency, and it's about $10. So I ask the student, can I borrow manwon? And they're like, what? They're surprised. I say, just play along, right? Say, okay. I don't actually borrow the money, though. But they say, okay, today is Monday. I will pay you back by Friday. Because, of course, it's just manwon. It's just like $10. I'm just going to give it back to them very quickly. It just takes me a second to give back $10 or manwon. It's a manwon bill very quickly. So it would be strange if I said, I will pay you back until Friday. But that's possible. In that case, I could give them chunwon, which is $1. I give them chunwon on Tuesday, ichunwon on Wednesday, ochunwon on Thursday, and the rest on Friday. So I paid him back until Friday. So you see the difference, right? Even though the verb is the same, the thought about the action is different. In one case, I pay him back. I just give him manwon right away. That's a very quick action, so I'll pay you back by Friday. But if I pay you back over several days, then I'm paying you back until Friday. And that is the difference between using until and by. Okay. Next is number 8. Please let me know how many staffs or how many employees will attend the conference. So which one do we use there? Well, I hope you chose employees, and we'll talk about that, of course, later. Number 9, we will notice you of any changes in the schedule, or we will notify. Yeah, we will notice you or notify you of any changes in the schedule. Which one is correct? Notice or notify? Of course, you chose notify, didn't you? If you didn't, don't worry. We'll go over the reasons why later. Okay. Number 10, what would you write? Would you write, it is grateful, or we would be grateful if you could respond today? Hopefully you wrote, we would be grateful. However, sometimes I do see students or participants in my workshops write, it is grateful, and then continue with the sentence. That's not correct. We would be grateful is correct. 11, would you please finish the report this afternoon or in this afternoon? Which is correct? This afternoon is correct, but it's very common. Very commonly, I see in this afternoon. So we'll talk about that. Number 12, Mr. Park is our newest staff, or Mr. Park is our newest staff member. Which one would you write? Which one is correct? Hopefully you wrote staff member. Mr. Park is our newest staff member. Moving on to number 13, Ms. Links will travel to New York or she will trip to New York next week. Which one is correct? Now, many students choose trip, but actually it should be travel. So, again, we'll talk about this later. Ms. Links will travel to New York next week. Number 14, we would like to invite you to join or join in our project. Which one is correct? Join is correct. So if you chose that, good. If you didn't, don't worry. We'll talk about this. Okay, number 15. How long will you be gone on your trip, or how long will you be gone on your travel? Which one is correct? In this case, it's trip. And again, I'll explain later. 16. Please select the menu you prefer, or please select the dish you prefer. Which is correct? Perhaps you chose dish. Dish would be correct. 17. If you have any question, or if you have any questions, which one is correct? You probably wrote any questions. A lot of students, though, will write any question. And then when they're writing their email, I'm looking over people's shoulder and seeing what they write. I see this very often. If you have any question, please feel free to contact me. But it should be any questions. Number 18. Could you please answer the followings, or could you please answer the following? Which one is correct? The second one, could you please answer the following, is correct. Don't write followings. 19, we suggest you to, or we suggest that you give a presentation at the conference. Which one is correct? We suggest that you give a presentation at the conference. Okay, this is kind of a big one. I'll explain this in the next video. We don't have time to go over all of them in this first video, but just click on the next video afterwards to get the explanations for the rest of them. Number 20, we are difficult, or it is difficult to meet the deadline. Which one is correct? Obviously, it is difficult to meet the deadline is correct. Maybe not obviously, because I do see many people will say, I am difficult or we are difficult. That is not correct. It is difficult is the correct choice. 21. We are expecting your presentation, or we are looking forward to your presentation. Which sounds more correct? Actually, both of them are possible, but if somebody's coming to your company and they're going to give a presentation, what would you write in an email? Would you write, we are expecting your presentation, period, or we are looking forward to your presentation? Which one is correct? Of course, you should write, we are looking forward to your presentation. And I'll discuss the difference between expect and look forward to later on in the next video. Last one is number 22. Most companies, or most of companies, do not want to pay for research. Now, this is very common, very common. Even after I teach this, my students will still make this common mistake, and they'll say most of. You shouldn't say most of, you should say most companies. Most companies do not want to pay for research. And again, in this video and in the next video, and in the third video also, I will discuss why the ones that are correct and the other ones are incorrect. Now, in each case, we had 2 or 3 choices. And what I'm doing here is I'm highlighting common mistakes. Like, for example, number 22, many Koreans that I meet, when they're speaking in English, it's very common for them to say most of companies, or most of people, or most of Koreans. This is incorrect. And I want to explain why later. And so hopefully you can identify and say, oh, this is not correct. This is the correct way to say it. and hopefully in the future you can overcome. But of course it takes practice. Like I said, sometimes I teach this and then 30 minutes later, an hour later, a participant will make the same mistake because these are kind of ingrained in their brain. And it's hard to overcome bad habits when you pick them up learning a language. And me too, of course. When I'm speaking Korean, I'm probably making a lot of mistakes, and I'm making the same mistakes even after somebody tells me, oh, don't say that, say it this way. Because, I don't know about you, I'm getting kind of old. My brain doesn't remember things very well. So I have to have a lot of practice to get it down. And I hope I get it down eventually. Okay, anyway. Let's begin with the explanation of many of these common mistakes that my students are making. And of course, this material corresponds to the material on pages 13 and 14. And then we have a little quiz on page 15 at the end. And then, of course, we'll continue the next lesson. But what I've done is I've tried to organize the mistakes into groups. So, for example, Common Mistakes 1, CM-1, we're talking about incorrect plural forms. So we see a lot of mistakes using plural forms. Of course, in Korean, you don't really have plural forms. You don't put an S on the end of your nouns. You don't change the noun at all. You use something else instead to make that plural. So, in this case, though, when you're writing or speaking in English, do not write S or ES after these nouns. And by the way, this list isn't all nouns. There's one thing that isn't a noun, but I'll explain that. But first, we have data. Do not write datas. So, for example, don't say, please send all the datas you have. That's not correct. Please send all the data you have. Now, data is an interesting word. It's already in the plural form. Now, as you may know, English borrows from a lot of different languages. Data comes from Latin, and data in Latin is already the plural form. What is the singular form of data? Once in a while, I get a very sharp student who will raise their hand in a workshop and says, oh, it's datum. I say, wow, that's great. So datum is the singular form of data, so don't put an S on the end of data. It's not correct. Just say, please send all the data you have. It's already in the plural form. Okay. Research is another one that I see quite often. People will write, our company has done a lot of researches in this area, or there have been many researches in this field. That's not correct. Don't use research, don't put ES on the end of research to make it plural. Research is non-count. It's the body of knowledge. Now, you can do studies, right? Your company can do 1 study, 2 studies, 3 studies in a certain field or in a certain area to gain some more information about something. But those studies contribute to the body of research. So we don't say researches. My company did a research. My company did a study, right? And there are many researches? No, there is a lot of research on this subject. Okay, so research is a non-count noun. Next, we have stuff, which is also a non-count noun. We don't count stuff, right? We don't say 1 stuff, 2 stuffs. We don't do that, right? So you should write, there is a lot of stuff we need to cover. You're having a meeting, you're writing about a meeting, there's a lot of stuff. Oh, that's a little informal. There are many issues we need to cover, but you could write informally, there is a lot of stuff we need to cover, not stuffs. There's a lot of stuff we need to cover. Okay. Staff. Now, this one is an interesting word. In fact, before I came to Korea, I was working for a large company in America. It had about 2,500 employees. Okay, and I was working in the human resources department as part of the communications team. And I never used the word staff. We always said employees, like employee of the month, right? There are 2,500 employees working at this company. So when I came to Korea, I suddenly heard a lot of people using staff. Staff, I want to be a staff at this company. She is a staff at such and such company. And not only is that incorrect usage, but it's also, wait a minute, why is everybody saying staff? And I thought about it, well, staff, employee. Aha, I got it. So staff is an easier word to say than employee, but most Americans will just say employee. Now, I'm not sure if there's a difference between American English and British English. I have asked a few British English teachers about this, and they say, yeah, we say employee too. And of course, Americans will also use the word staff. Don't misunderstand me. We do use staff. We use it especially for certain fields. For example, hotels, the hotel staff, like this example, the hotel staff is large. That's no problem. Or newspaper, right? Newspaper staff. He's a staff writer, you could say that. Or the newspaper has a large staff. In theater or entertainment productions, they usually refer to those people as staff, the employees as staff. For political organizations, sometimes you might read a news article about a White House staffer. That's an interesting word, staffer. It means one member of a staff. So especially for political organizations, though. For example, a congressional staffer. Not the congressperson, but somebody who works for that congressperson is a congressional staffer. A White House staffer is a person that is a member of the White House staff, the staff that works for the president. So, but normally, in most companies, we just say employees. So be careful. The couple of examples I gave you before, for example, I might hear something like, he is a staff at that company. No, he's not a staff, because staff, another thing about staff is a group of people. It's like a team, right? So if you say, I want to be a staff at that company, I'm sorry, you can't be a staff at that company. You're only one person. You're not a group of people. I'm not saying anything bad about your qualifications or your experience. Maybe you are qualified and you're experienced, great. But you can't be a staff because you're only one person. You can, however, be a staff member. So you can say he is a staff member. And by the way, there's a good tip that I give my workshop participants. Whenever you're going to use staff in a sentence, just substitute the word team. If the sentence makes sense, then you can use staff. For example, he is a team member. That's fine, that makes sense. Then you can say he is a staff member. But if you wrote, he is a staff, period, he is a team, how can he be a team? He's only one person. That doesn't make sense. So we need to change the sentence. So that's a good tip for you to remember. Just substitute the word staff for team. If it makes sense, you're good. If it doesn't make sense, you need to rewrite the sentence. Okay. Next, we have information. Information is non-count. We don't say informations, right? So you say, I found the information on this website. Next is feedback. Feedback is also non-count. So the client sent her feedback on the survey, not her feedbacks. This is kind of common. I do see many students will write feedbacks. But feedback and advice, by the way, are very similar. Very rarely, sometimes I see people will write, please give me your advices. That's incorrect. Please give me your advice. It's the same as saying, please give me your feedback. They're both non-count. Don't put an S on the end of those words. Equipment is also non-count. So is all the equipment ready? So there's many pieces of equipment. Now, yes, sometimes if you go on the internet, you might see some companies, American companies, using equipment with an S at the end. That's not very common. That's a little bit rare. And what I think is going on in that case is talking about different types of equipment. So a company might produce office equipment, factory equipment, heavy machinery to be used out in the field. Those are different types of equipment. It's similar to the word food. I'm sure in school you've learned that food is non-count. We don't say, how many foods did you have for breakfast? That's strange. No. How much food did you eat for breakfast? Or, I like to eat a lot of food. Or, there's a lot of food on the table, for example. However, sometimes you will see on internet websites and maybe chefs, professionals in the food industry talk about foods. Now what they're talking about here is different types of food, right? So you have meat products, you have dairy products, you have grains, cereals, right? Those are different types of food. So people might say different foods, and that's commonly acceptable, and that's common standard practice. So I think the same thing is going on with equipment. But for most of the cases, 99% of the time, don't put S on equipment. If you're writing an email to somebody, they're coming to your company to give a presentation, you might write, please let us know if you have any special equipment needs, or if you need any special equipment to be set up, not equipments. Okay, good. Next we have following. This is interesting why people get mixed up with this. Because they'll write, please review the following. That's very common. Many people will write in an email, please review the following, or could you please give me your feedback on the following? Could you please answer the following? What's going on is that people get lazy. And there should be a noun after following, after the following items, right? Item is a noun, and if it's more than one, we use an S because it's a count noun. So please review the following items. People get lazy and they just don't write the noun. They just say, please review the following. So then what I think happened was that maybe some people were getting confused and thinking, oh, well, following, there's more than one item, so I should put S on the end of following. That is not correct. So don't do that, because following is not a noun. It's an adjective. It modifies items. The following items, the items that come after this, right? So we don't put an S on an adjective. That's not correct. So please don't do this. And this is very common. Usually when I point this out, one or two students in my workshop say, oh, really? I didn't know that, because that's what they're doing. So just if you're doing that, stop doing it. Now you know why you should not do it, and just correct in the future. No worries. Okay, the last one is work. And of course we saw that in the quiz that you just took. Don't say works. We say work. There's no S at the end of work. We have a lot of work to do, not works. There are many works we need to do. No, there is a lot of work we need to do. Okay. Now, very similar to the idea of putting S at the end of certain nouns, don't put S behind schedule, agenda, and menu. And that's because these words are also confused with other words. And I find very typical mistakes being made using these words. For example, I'll give you an example. I have many schedules these days. That's a common Konglish type of sentence to say or to write in an email. I have many schedules these days. Well, what I tell my participants in the workshop is, look, I don't know you. I just met you a couple hours ago, so I don't really know you that well, but I do know that all of you only have one schedule. You have a daily schedule, a weekly schedule, a monthly schedule, maybe a yearly schedule, but it's only one schedule. Okay? What you mean to say is, I have a lot of appointments these days. Because what basically is a schedule? A schedule is a list of appointments. Right? A schedule is a list of appointments. So don't say I have many schedules. No, you only have one schedule. You have many appointments on your schedule. Okay? So you might say I have many appointments. I have a lot of appointments these days. So be careful with these two words. Also, in the same idea, agenda. Sometimes I will hear people say or write, we have many agendas for today's meeting. If I receive an email that says there are 5 agendas for tomorrow's meeting, my reaction is, oh my God, how long is this meeting going to be, right? 5 agendas. There's one agenda for each meeting. One meeting has one agenda. On that agenda, you have maybe items or topics to discuss. For example, we have many items on the agenda for today's meeting because the meeting only has one agenda. Why? Because an agenda is a list of items or topics to discuss at a meeting. Okay, so again, be careful with these two words. You can see a pattern, right? Schedule is a list of appointments, and agenda is a list of items or topics to discuss at a meeting. You don't have 5 agendas at the meeting. There's only one agenda, but there's 5 topics on the agenda. Okay. Next, menu and dish. You know it's coming. Okay, this restaurant has many menus. Now, technically that could be correct, but I'll explain. But in the sense that I usually hear this, it is incorrect. What they're saying is, sometimes my Korean client will take me out to lunch and we'll go to a restaurant, and he or she will say, oh, this restaurant has many menus. And I think, well, yeah, of course they have many menus. There's one menu for you, there's one menu for me, there's another menu for this person. There are many different menus. A menu is, of course, a printed list of the items or dishes that you can buy at the restaurant, that you can choose and that you can eat. So menu doesn't mean something that you choose to eat. That's not a menu. The menu is the list of dishes. Okay? So this restaurant has, you can say this restaurant has a large menu. It means there are many items on the menu. Besides dish, you can use item. So you can use item for agenda. You can use item for menu. So there are many items on the menu. Of course, you could also say there are many dishes on the menu. You could also say this restaurant has a large menu, or it has a varied menu. If it has a varied menu, maybe it has Korean food, Chinese food, Italian food, different types of food or foods, depending on which way you want to go. Okay, so this restaurant has a large menu. But don't say this restaurant has many menus. Of course it has many menus, right? It has maybe 20, 50 menus, depending on how big the restaurant is, how many customers they get during lunch. They have to have menus for all those customers, but there are items on the menu. So be careful. Be careful with these words. Remember, schedule is a list of appointments, an agenda is a list of items or topics, and a menu is a list of items or dishes. So be careful. Don't confuse these words, because we hear a lot of incorrect usages using this vocabulary. Okay, moving on to the second group. The second group is talking about incorrect verb plus prepositions. Now, when you studied English, a long time ago, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school, you probably learned many verbs do have prepositions after them. That's true. But some verbs don't have prepositions, and it sounds strange to use a preposition after some verbs. I'm sorry, there's no pattern. There's no formula to know which verbs have prepositions after them or not. You just have to treat them on an individual basis. When you learn that verb, also study, is there a preposition that comes after it? And of course, some verbs, when you don't use a preposition, they might have a different meaning than the same verb with a preposition after it. These are individual cases, and I'm sorry, English, it has a very rich vocabulary. There's so many words and so many combinations of words, but you need to treat these on an individual basis. Let me go over some of the ones that I've noticed that are very commonly misused. In other words, don't use a preposition after these verbs. For example, contact. Very often I hear people say, please contact to Mr. Lee, or please contact to Ms. Kim. No, just please contact. No preposition. Please contact me tomorrow. Not contact to me, just please contact me tomorrow. Next is visit in. We saw that in the quiz, right? Mr. Johnson will visit in Thailand? No, Mr. Johnson will visit Thailand. So, Mr. Lee will visit in San Francisco next week? No, Mr. Lee will visit San Francisco next week. Other ones, for example, near to. I hear this quite often. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, one of my students, I was saying, after the workshop, I was saying, do you have far to go? And he said, well, my office is near to Shindorim Station. I thought, no, not near to Shindorim Station. Your office is near Shindorim Station. So again, don't use to after near. It's just near. Our office is near Shindorim Station. Next one, join in. There's no reason to use in after join. Join kind of already has that idea that you're joining a group. You don't have to add the extra meaning of in a group. You join a group, you become part of that group. So it's strange to say, please join in the meeting. There's no need. Just say, please join the meeting. There's no need to put the extra in. So sometimes prepositions are redundant. They suggest a meaning that's already included in the verb. Oh, by the way, I didn't put it in here, but sometimes when I take a trip in Korea and I'm using the KTX is the Korea Transportation's rail system, high-speed trains, and normal speed trains as well, between the different cities, I'll be standing on the platform and I'll hear the announcement. And the announcement says, the train for Seoul is approaching to platform 3. I'm like, approaching to platform 3? No, it's just approaching platform 3. So that's kind of interesting. That's another thing that I've noticed, that, it's just common mistakes. There's no reason to use to after approach. The train is approaching platform 3. Maybe somebody in the KTX board will study this lesson and change that. Maybe, who knows? Okay. Common mistakes group 3, using in before time phrases. This is also very common. This is small mistakes. These are a lot of small details, but they are common mistakes. And many of my students do express the desire to really perfect their English usage. So I hope these lessons or these points, these tips are useful to you. But again, there are small mistakes, but they are interesting. Don't use in before time phrases that start with this, next, or last. Let me give you some examples. For single actions, for example, people will say, did you have a meeting in this morning? That's not correct. Or, he will give a presentation in next month. No, that's not correct. Our company had a picnic in last weekend. I don't mean to overemphasize in. I'm just doing it for the example's sake. Our company had a picnic in last weekend. That sounds incorrect also. There's no reason to use in before in these cases. It should be, there is a staff meeting this morning. Or, Mr. Kim will give a presentation next month. So in all these examples, did you have a meeting this morning? He will give a presentation next month. Our company had a picnic last weekend. Don't use in before this, next, and last. There's no need to do that. Now, of course, in these examples, we're describing single actions, actions that happen only once, this morning, next month, or last week. Sometimes students say, well, wait a minute, what about in the mornings? Well, then you're talking about something different. In that case, you're talking about recurring actions, or actions that happen again and again. For example, our office has staff meetings in the mornings. In this case, of course, you would use in, because in the mornings means every morning. Okay, it's a recurring action. Or employee evaluations are conducted in each quarter. So in each and every quarter, every fourth of the year, employee evaluations are conducted. It's a recurring action. So in the mornings, in each quarter. So when you're talking about recurring actions, you can use in the. That's fine. But don't say in this morning or in next week when you're talking about single actions. We don't do that. That sounds strange, and it's very obvious when I do hear it. It's a common mistake. Okay. Now, expressions for expressing thanks and gratitude. As we saw in the email that we proofread in Unit 1, and we also saw in the quiz that we just took, right? There was a choice you had. It is grateful, or we would be grateful. It would be grateful, or we would be grateful. This is very similar. It is grateful versus I would be grateful. Unfortunately, recently, I've been seeing this expression kind of often in my workshops, and I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from, why people are using it, but that's incorrect. So don't say it would be grateful if you could assist us. That is not correct. You should say I would be grateful. You could put very to emphasize that. I would be very grateful if you could assist us. Why? Because grateful is a feeling. It describes a feeling. It's an adjective that describes how you feel. If you say, I am grateful, it means I am happy, right? I am pleased. If you say, I would be grateful if you do something, that's a conditional statement, of course. If you assist us, I would be grateful, right? But it would be grateful. What is it? It's not a person, right? So how can it feel gratitude? That doesn't make sense. So don't write it would be grateful. How can it feel gratitude? Doesn't make sense. So I would be grateful. So if you are using that expression, it is grateful, stop, change it to I would be grateful or we would be grateful. Another example, it would be grateful for your assistance. That is incorrect. We would be grateful for your assistance. That is correct, because we can feel gratitude. Okay, good. Now, another expression or vocabulary word that you can use very often or very commonly to express thanks or gratitude is appreciate. And this is very commonly used, of course, in business situations. You can write, it would be appreciated if you could send us. That is correct. No problem. Wait a minute. At this point, some students will raise their hand and say, wait a minute, why is it would be grateful if you incorrect, but it would be appreciated if you correct? What's going on? Okay, let me explain this real quick and then we'll go back to using appreciate. As I said before, we don't use it would be grateful because it, right, it cannot feel gratitude, right? So it would be grateful. Grateful here is an adjective. But take a look at the sentence structure for the next one. It would be appreciated if you. It's almost the same, right? It looks like exactly the same type of sentence, but there is a difference. What is the difference? This is an adjective. It describes somebody. Is this an adjective that describes somebody? No. It's part of a passive verb construction. Be appreciated. It would be appreciated. And a passive verb construction, you don't mention the subject, but it is implied. So the subject that is implied here is by us or by me, right? So it would be appreciated by us if you, okay? That's the implication. And that's why they're different. So it's acceptable to say it would be appreciated if you if you did something, but it would be grateful, that doesn't make sense. And that is why it would be grateful if you is incorrect and it would be appreciated if you is correct. So the great question, you know, I love it when students ask questions like this because, you know, of course they're thinking logically about the language and thinking, hey, we can say this, but we can't say this. What's going on? Well, that's the reason for the difference between those two expressions. So, great question. Glad you asked it. Okay, good. Let's go back to appreciate. Okay, so, it would be appreciated if you could send us. That is correct. But it is incorrect to say we would appreciate you send us. That is incomplete because we need to add a couple of words there. It if. We would appreciate it if. So you need to add these two words right here, right? It if. We would appreciate it if you send us. Now, if you are writing a sentence and you say we would appreciate it if, then you use subject and then verb clause. We would appreciate it if you send us the report by Friday. We would appreciate it if you gave a presentation about this situation. We would appreciate it if you send us, if you sent us. It doesn't matter which one you use. Same meaning. Either one is okay. So that's fine. So this one is incorrect. We just talked about that. The next one, we would appreciate if you send us. That is not correct. We would appreciate it if. Again, it's incomplete. Okay, so that is also incorrect. Now, it's interesting. The next one, we would appreciate your sending us. So you could say that. That's fine. You don't have to use it if unless the rest of your sentence is you send or sent us, right? But if you use ing, a gerund form of the verb, you would use we would appreciate your sending us. Now, most grammar books, I don't know if you remember this from a grammar class, English class for middle school or high school, but most grammar books will tell you that it should be possessive, right? Your. We would appreciate his sending us. We would appreciate her sending us, right? It's possessive. Most grammar books will say that's correct. And if you say we would appreciate you sending us, that is incorrect. However, common usage, many people, many native speakers will use we would appreciate you sending us. Okay, now it may say something different in the grammar book that you used when you were younger, but as you know, languages are always changing, they're always evolving. And the things that I learned in school, way back a long time ago, are ignored nowadays. You know, some of the rules that I've learned, people don't pay any attention to those anymore, and they just do it anyway. So it's interesting. Let me just switch the screen here. You notice that I wrote in Google with quotation marks, we would appreciate you giving. Now, if you want to check these sentences, Google is a good resource to use. Write your sentence or your phrase, your part of your sentence, or just your 2 or 3 word expression using quotation marks before and after. And what Google will do is it will search all the web pages with just that part. And as you can see, there are many different expressions using we would appreciate you giving. So coming back here, of course, we would appreciate you sending us is also acceptable. So you can use, technically, yes. Formally, yes. Use possessive. We would appreciate your sending us. But it is also common practice and standard to use we would appreciate you sending us. So, long explanation, but interesting. It's interesting how the language evolves. The last one is we appreciate any help. So after appreciate, right, you could use just a noun, right? A gerund is a noun. Putting ing after a verb, that is a noun. But of course, you could just use a noun. We appreciate any help you can send us. We appreciate any assistance you could give us. We appreciate any free samples you could send us. So you could just use a noun after we appreciate, and that is also okay using appreciate. Okay, so a lot of different ways to use appreciate. Okay, another thing that I also hear that is incorrect, it's kind of along the lines of it would be grateful, is I or we will be great pleasure. This, of course, is incorrect, right? We don't say that. We should say we would be pleased if, or to, in some cases. For example, I will be great pleasure if we could. One of my students wrote this in an email. Actually, I think that was in the email in Unit 1. I will be great pleasure if we could keep meeting at Seoul, Singapore, or other conferences, right? We corrected that. So that is incorrect. You should write, we would be pleased to meet you during the conference. So we would be pleased, not I will be great pleasure, because I will be pleasure, that doesn't make any sense. How can you be pleasure? But you can be pleased. You can be happy, right? You can be grateful. So I would be pleased, I would be grateful, similar idea, to meet you during the conference, not I will be great pleasure. You could also use this though. It would give us great pleasure. So it would give us pleasure. That makes sense, and that's fine. And that's actually a formal expression you can use in a business context. It would give us great pleasure to invite you to the 5th annual symposium on such and such. Okay, good. So, but be careful. Don't say I will be great pleasure, because that doesn't make sense. Okay, now it's time for a review. And the review is on page, I believe, 15. Yep, it's right here. And of course, it ends this section. The next video lesson you can find with the QR code here, or just, subscribe to this channel and you will be notified when new videos are posted. Okay, or you can see a list of the playlists, because I put all these videos on the same playlist. Anyway, on page 15, you can see 6 different exercises. Now, in each one of these, it says correct any incorrect parts of the sentences below. So in each one of these sentences, there could be a mistake. There could be one mistake. There could be 2 mistakes, or there could be no mistakes. There are no more than 2 mistakes, though. No sentence has 3 mistakes. It's either the sentence is correct, no problem, or the sentence has 1 mistake, or it has 2 mistakes. So let's go over them together. The first sentence is, please contact to Ms. Park to make a schedule. What do you think? You can pause the video, of course, think about it, maybe write or just underline parts of the sentence that you think are incorrect, and then continue with the explanation. So here we have actually 2 mistakes, right? First of all, as we learned before, don't use the preposition to after contact. So it should just be please contact Ms. Park. And of course, we learned that schedule, right, is a list of appointment. We don't use the expression make a schedule, but we do use the expression make an appointment. So it should be please contact Ms. Park to make an appointment. That's correct. You don't make a schedule, you make an appointment. Okay, moving on to number 2. We would appreciate you giving a presentation about this issue. So take a look at this sentence and determine where is the mistake, or if there is a mistake. Okay? Probably you found there is no mistake if you've been paying attention, because before I said we would appreciate you giving a presentation about this issue. Now, maybe that's not the way you learned in your grammar book, but as I said before, it is common practice nowadays. It is fairly standard, and many people will use it this way, and many native English speakers won't have an issue with this. Of course, your grammar book would have probably taught you we would appreciate your giving a presentation about this issue, which would be correct. And of course, you could also change it to this. We would appreciate it if you could give a presentation about this issue. Actually, the green text here is more formal. The original is okay, it's fine, but it's less formal, it's more casual. So, but they're both acceptable, no problem. Number 3, please visit to our office during your trip in next week. What do you guys think? 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, no mistakes? 2 mistakes. Okay, good. So again, visit, we see this again. Don't use to after visit. Should be please visit our office during your trip in next week. Not in next week, just next week, because we don't use in before next. So it should be please visit our office during your trip next week. Okay, good. Number 4. It would be grateful if you send the document today. What is the mistake in this sentence? Is there a mistake in this sentence? Yes, there is a mistake in the sentence. We remember the nonsense expression, right? It would be grateful. How can it feel gratitude? It doesn't make sense. So we need to change that to we would be grateful if you send the document today. That is correct. Okay. Number 5. Please give us your feedbacks on the followings. So what do you guys think? No mistakes? 1 mistake? 2 mistakes? 2 mistakes. And they have to do with plurals, right? As we saw in CM1, Common Mistakes Group 1. So first of all, please give us your feedbacks. Feedback is non-count. We do not use an S after feedback. It's very similar to advice. You could say, please give us your advice also, but not advices. Just please give us your feedback on the followings. No, we do not put S after following. Just please give us your feedback on the following, as we see here. Please give us your feedback on the following. And of course, you could put items. Again, it's not necessary, and a lot of native speakers don't do it. We're lazy, right? Just get rid of the noun. And we just say, please give us your feedback on the following. Please review the following. Please take a look at the following, not the followings, right? Okay, so be careful with the S on those 2 words. 6. Mr. Cho is a staff at CMS Inc. What do you guys think? No mistakes? 1 mistake? 2 mistake? 1 mistake. Mr. Cho cannot be a staff, right? He's only one person. He can be a staff member, but he is not a staff, right? So remember the tip that I taught you guys before. Mr. Cho is a team at CMS. How can Mr. Cho be a team? He's only one person. So that doesn't make sense. We need to put member. Mr. Cho is a team member. You could say that. So Mr. Cho is a staff member at CMS Incorporated. Okay, great. We covered a lot of ground here, so I'm going to cut and give you guys a break at right here. Of course, I'm going to continue this subject in the second video lesson, and we'll continue with some of the other explanations for the answers that we took in the quiz. So be sure to stay tuned for that video, or just click on the next video in this series. Hope to see you there. Thanks for studying with me, and as I said before, if you notice any of these kind of strange English expressions in your own country, I'd be very interested to hear about that, and maybe if you have questions about them, I'd be happy to answer them for you. So please leave a comment below. And of course, subscribe to get all the videos. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Take care and have a good day.